Hi, welcome to Balisong Meet the Makers. I'm your host, Chell Wong, and today we have Dylan Goodwin, better known as A51. A51 is known for his handmade leather sheaths, as well as his three balisongs, the Pluto, the Phobos, and now the Apollo.
I have one in a coffin.
Yeah! All right, well, thanks. How are you doing? Thanks for coming on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I've been really busy, so I do plan on putting some work into this, but I've slowed way down on uploads because of work. But hey, so it goes, I suppose. But I guess a fun tidbit is that Dylan and I are actually like neighbors. We live near-ish each other, and I learned that he was in Boston, and I was like, oh my god, no way, I'm in Boston too. And we ended up starting a group chat to form the Boston Balisong Flipper group. So if you are from the Boston area and you want to join, let me know. But that's how that started, because I was like, oh my god, we should find other people in the area. And so it slowly grew a little bit. But,
yeah, over time I would see like shipping addresses that were really close to me, and I was like, should I just like save the postage and just drop them off? I was like, that seems like an invasion of privacy.
Yeah. That I actually wanted you to be my first guest, but you're like, nah, dude, I'm busy. And it's like, all right, I guess we'll defer for as long as you need. And then here we go. Now we got the Apollo that just came out not that long ago. Hopefully by the time I'll try and get this podcast out soon enough so that it's not just ancient news.
I know. I wanted something new to talk about. I was on the same stuff for a while, so I was like, we got to hold off until the Apollo's out at least, you know?
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so I always like to start off with, how did you get your name? How did you become A51?
Yeah. It actually started in 2018. Before I was doing anything with knives, my account, I swapped the name to the official Area 51, because in 2018 people were trying to raid Area 51, and it was like it got pretty big. And like, as a conspiracy therapist myself, I kind of like to indulge a bit. I thought that was pretty freaking hilarious.
Did you say conspiracy therapist?
Yeah, I don't know. I like to indulge a little bit in the theories. So I thought it was really funny. So I swapped my name to the official Area 51. And probably about like 2 or 3 weeks after doing that, I posted my first set of pivot screws that I made. Because that's how it all started, was making handmade screws. And then it just kind of stuck from there. So like, actually, like some of like the OG people, or like the original stickers I made, was all Area 51. And then I end up swapping it over to A51, and that's what I've been rolling under for the past, I think, 4 or 5 years.
I like that you could have been a shitpost account because you had the official Area 51, and then you're like, by the way, I handmade some screws.
Yeah.
So, my next question is, how did you get into making balisongs? But we started with screws. How did that move forward?
Yeah, so once I started doing the screws, like, this is back in 2018, the community was very different than now. It doesn't feel that long ago, but it was still so fresh, you know? Like, balisong as a hobby is still really new in the scope of things. But back then, like, just posting pivot screws that looked fancy, that was, like, pretty baller back then, you know? So I started doing tons of screws. I was doing them all with files. Like, this is, like, one of the first files I bought to carve out pivot heads. So, like, a lot of time with this little thing and a block of wax, and I would, chuck up a screw into a vise and sit there and file them down, basically. That's how I shaped them all.
So did you take pre-existing screws and then modify them?
Yeah, for my 18th birthday, I bought, I think, 3,000 T10 screws. That was, like, my gift.
3,000 screws?
Yeah, that was, like, my birthday gift when I was, like, 18. I was like, I want a bunch of screws. So I bought, like, 3,000 pivot screws off of, like, knifekits.com. Because in my head, I was like, this was not a lot of money, and I could, like, turn this into something. So once I, like, sold, like, 3,000 screws, just peddling these things like a madman, I had enough money to invest in leather stuff, actually. Because, I started off, and I'm known for leatherworking. So at the time...
Do you have those screws, though? I would like to... Because I think you took a picture and put it on your story. I don't know if you hold it the camera.
So these are the first ones I ever made. They're actually, like, 2 different styles. But,
okay.
Yeah, these are actually acid etched, but they're gray because it's stainless.
Nice.
But yeah, so I made those. So with all my screw money, I decided like, all right, I should start getting into leatherworking a bit, you know, because at the time I wanted a sheath really bad, and like no one was doing it. And there's one guy, and he was scamming everybody. He took on like a
Oh,
bunch of
bitch.
orders. Yeah, he took on a bunch of orders. My good friend Eli was waiting on one forever. So I thought, you know what? I'm pretty good with my hands. I'm like, I can make wallets if I want for myself and all sorts of stuff. Went out, bought some tools, realized very quickly that was a terrible idea. Leatherworking is a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So I ended up spending like all the money I made off screws on leatherworking tools. I was like, I'm in this deep. And that kind of just started taking off. So I practiced
All
that for a
right.
while. You know, this was like, I think my second one I ever made. It
You
was
do
all
have very beautiful sheaths.
it was all hand cut, you know. I actually have some of the other firsts. This was like my first collaboration with JK Designs. Shout out
Ooh,
to
all right.
Julian Klein.
Which we'll
So
get to.
right, and
'Cause
then
yeah,
this
because you
was the
work together.
BRS collab too. So I did a
Oh,
collaboration for BRS, and that was pretty
shit, that's
cool.
good.
We did like inlaid chevrons. So this was like
Yeah.
one leather, and then I would cut out the chevrons and inlay them. So that was a huge pain, but
Holy shit. It looks fucking cool, though.
yeah. But the
Um,
leather working is how I got in touch with JK. That's kind of how it all connected.
Man, networking, baby. As a freelancer,
Yeah.
I do a lot of advice. Now, as a fucking professor, I teach my students about like networking and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I want. There's two things earlier. You're like, oh yeah, I got 3,000. My brain is like, you turn 18, you're a man, you're an adult, and your parents go, son, you're a man now. What do you want for your birthday? I want 3,000 screws.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I think about is the fact that you just call people pimp sometimes. It's just like, yeah, my screw money. I'm like, yeah, pimp. Um, it's like, my bad.
Yeah.
I just call people pimp. So, through leatherworking, you worked with BRS, which was really cool. You worked with JK. You still work with JK. How
Yeah.
did that
Yeah.
kind of evolve into Balisongs? Because leather is really different.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so to backtrack, it was still starts with leather a bit, but yeah, I was logged out of my account actually for like a week. I didn't even realize
Uh-oh.
it. So I logged back in and I get a DM from JK Designs, and at the time I was stoked because I thought I won a Monarch. Because one of the reasons why I started making screws and leather is because I wanted money to buy a Monarch. So
And then you bought leather making tools.
yeah, so I opened it. It's like this long message, and I was like, "Well, this is an intensive process if I want a Monarch." And he was like, "Hey, like I've seen your work. Like, what would it be to like do a run?" And I think it was around Halloween too, so it was kind of fun. It was around this time actually, like probably about 3-4 years ago now. So I started working on leather stuff for him. So that was this first run of leather product back in the day with his old
Ooh.
stamp and his old logo. So we did that, and I started chatting with him a bit more. And at this point, I was doing leatherworking for a while. And as much as I love leatherworking, and I still do it, and it's kind of a love-hate relationship because it's so hard on the hands, it's so time-consuming. I want to branch out and kind of maybe try my hand at making knives because it seemed more sustainable, and I already knew CAD. I wanted to maybe look into becoming a machinist at some point, and that was kind of a good path to go down, it seemed like. So we got into talks. I worked a deal with him because I was pretty young at the time. I still am. I'm a young guy, but I didn't have a ton of liquid cash on hand. So
How
we did
young are you again?
I'm 24. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You're like you're about as you're. Some people are like, I'm 18. I'm go, oh, fuck me. Oh.
Yeah, but at the time I was still, I think this was 3 years ago. So, I didn't have a ton of cash to do like a huge run of knives. So he kind of hooked me up. We did like 15 of the first design. That's the Pluto. We just did 15 of them. And that's from there just set me off to snowball, and keep kind of building up to larger productions, picking up new equipment and stuff like that.
Nice. This was 3 years ago. The Pluto. This was also just like, because the Pluto, I think by some people's standards today is maybe a bit like kind of heavier.
Yeah,
I actually
yeah.
really like it. I love this gut hook design. And
Yeah.
I mean, I love jimping, which you didn't do jimping until a bit later. But this one I think was modded by. Oh shoot, I don't remember who this one was modded by. I can never remember. I bought it secondhand, so alas. But the Pluto. that took off well. You got profit from the original first like 15 or so.
Yeah, we did the first 15, got feedback on them. It was my first ever take at making a knife, and I had
Yeah,
no
for sure.
data as far as what would really come out of it. So releasing them was kind of like, see what happens. People were like, it's really handle heavy, and I was like, yeah, it's pretty handle heavy. So we V2'd it. So we did like 45 V2s. Those were still pretty handle heavy, but they were better. Like we were definitely honing in, and getting them a little more refined. Um, and that was kind of
Mine's
it
number
for the Pluto.
19.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that would be a V2. Yeah.
gotcha. Did you do a V3 or just V2?
So I have plans for, I wouldn't call it a V3, but a design that's a reimagined version of the Pluto. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pluto Shippuden.
Yeah. It's I think it's a cool design. I think the vision of Pluto was like I really like it still. I think it's a very like unique, fun design.
Yeah.
But I didn't have necessarily the skills and the experience to maybe make it what it could have been, and I think I have that now. So I'm excited to maybe reincarnate it at some point.
All right, that sounds really hype. Now the Pluto, you said that was 3 years ago at least. That was the first run. I don't know how long ago you stopped doing the Pluto, and then at some point you shifted to your second knife design, the Phobos. How
Yeah,
did that look? Because these are different. As I
yeah,
remember me
yeah.
being baby, being like, as brand new, I'm like, how are they? And you're just like, they're different. They're not the same at all. And now that I flip them, I'm like, oh yeah, no, these two knives are not at all like each other.
Yeah,
I learned
yeah.
a lot since then.
Yeah. I mean, Phobos was an interesting project. I think leaving the market was changing really quickly. Like Bali,
Mm,
even now, is still changing quickly. I think it's settling. One of the things was weight. So, like when I first
hmm.
made the Pluto, people were still considering the Alpha Beast like a pretty good knife. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm flipping one right now, but the market standards have definitely shifted, and what people are looking for is a
Yeah.
standard flipping knife. So I wanted
For
something that was
context,
like quick.
yeah, I think the Alpha Beast is like 5 ounces and the Pluto's like 4.6.
I think it was 4.4, I believe. Yeah, I
Oh,
don't think it was
really?
ever
Oh, I got a scale
4.6.
right here.
Yeah,
But I mean, yeah, the Alpha Beast is by today's standards is quite hefty.
yeah, it's a
Mine is
beast.
4.55, so
Oh shit.
um,
Okay, yeah, so it is heavier. Yeah,
that's okay. But yeah, the Alpha Beast being like by today's standards, actually, I've been borrowing Buffalo Dingus's Heed Sea Knight, which is kind of like an Alpha Beast. But the Pluto's sandwich 4.6, but then you felt like the market was shifting towards lighter, more agile.
yeah. So yeah, I wanted something that was faster, also more streamlined. So one of the biggest complaints about the Pluto was that it was kind of chunky, especially towards the ends, and it kind of was. Like I don't have big hands, but I didn't mind it. Like I like the Solo, and that's a really big knife. But not
Yeah,
everyone wanted that. And also around the time of the Phobos was kind of when the Kraken, no, the Nami was kind of hitting the market, and that's a pretty
right.
small knife. It's thin, it's Chanwich. So I decided, all right, like let me give my take on like kind of a more fast flipping Chanwich design. I took inspiration from the Gigas. It has kind of skinnier handles. Also, the Kuski rep handles were kind of thinner. So I wanted to kind of make a thinner handled knife with the Phobos. And then I went with pyramid shaped handles because I thought that was kind of unique. At the time, I didn't really see anyone doing that. And I think it's a cool
Pyramid.
shape. I think the pyramid kind of shape handles. I think that's
Oh, I
kind
see
of
what you mean by
pretty rad.
pyramid.
Yeah,
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 yeah. So like it's funny because like when you hold them up next to each other, they don't feel. Well, no, actually, you can see some difference. The biggest thing is like these are like really blocky and rectangular, which I don't
right.
mind. But like the Phobos, I see how you took some, some design kind of ideas from the Nami. It's Chanwich. It's much sleeker. Just with these sort of rounded corners, it just feels a lot smoother. And yeah,
Yeah,
I do like this sort of hexagonal kind of feel in the hands. But it does feel light and smooth. It's about I just weighed mine 4.23 ounces, so not
yeah.
as light as the Tsunami, which is I think just at 4 ounces, but certainly lighter than 4.6, 4.5. And yeah, I mean, I think this is much more agile.
Yeah. It still maybe was a little bit more handle bias for some people's likings, but at
Yeah.
least when I was design, there's kind of a like So I don't do in-house manufacturing right now. So I spend a lot of time designing, and then, I release the product, and there's kind of a little bit of lag, and the market moves so quick that by the time you release something you've designed and you've already prototyped it and it's been in manufacturing, the market's changed sometimes. So it's kind of unique. Like, I never flipped a Nami until actually, like, probably, I think, oh yeah, it was the first meetup we all had in Cambridge. That's the first time I ever flipped a Nami.
No, that was the first time?
Yeah. Yeah, the only knives I flipped
God.
previously were BRS stuff and my Orca. That's the only knives I own.
That was not that long ago. I mean, I think at this point it must have been like a year, which feels like, oh my god, a year's gone by. But in the grand scheme of things, holy shit, has it been a year? No, that can't be right?
I think it's been like 2 years. Yeah.
No, right? No, it's definitely not been 2 years. I know that much for sure, because I was not doing this 2 years ago.
No, you're right. It's only been a year. Yeah, it's only been a year.
Oh my god. That's crazy. I was like, was I still living in this apartment a year ago? And I was. But it's just kind of wild to think, like, you hadn't even flipped a Nami back then. And this, how long ago was the Phobos? Did you start prototyping? Or at least when this first released?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I think I started, my first released about 2 years ago now. Yeah, just about 2 years ago.
Oh, man. Okay, it was only 2 years. In my brain, I feel like it's been longer. One also thing about the Phobos is that there are... there's pin weights in the end, which I think also the Nami has. Mine has 0 weights in this one, and it's like, it feels pretty neutral. But I've also flipped one that was also with no pins, and it was more handle bias. And I don't know why one of them was just different. Actually, I'm not sure. But you said that you don't do manufacturing. It's JK that does the machining, right?
Yeah.
So I guess I'm curious, what is the process between you and JK, since he does the machining, but I know that you do a lot of other things. So
right.
I guess, can you tell me about that process?
Yeah. So when I first started working with Julian, I didn't have much. So I would pay for him to do like my anodizing and blasting and stuff. But then from there, like, I would basically just do assembly work and sharpening. But ever since the second round of Phobos, everything's been in-house. So, like, blasting, I got my full compressor set up, because you need you need a fairly large compressor to blast. So I had to get, like, electrician to come out, wire up a new compressor, get my cabinets, all my anodizing's in-house, still sharpening. So I get all raw parts, but he still does all my milling and also my heat treat, and now service grinding as well, which is great.
Gotcha.
But as far as working together,
handle milling and blade milling, and heat treating. But then you get just the sandwich slabs in the blade. And then sorry, I cut you off, but what were you saying?
Yeah, after that, it's off the races. I have to go in and start polishing out some stuff, mask off things, blast, etching, stuff like that. I'm like a designer and like a finisher, really. Like, I'm not really physically, I'm not a machinist, yet. That's the next step. We're redoing the shop, and we're getting some machines in here, so I'm excited for that.
Holy shit. If you have the capacity to machine things yourself, that would be super cool.
Yeah.
I really want to see the shop some point.
Nothing crazy. Nothing crazy yet, but we're getting there.
I know. Part of me was like, I really wanted to be able to, like, possibly, like, oh, can I show your shop? And you're like, not right now, I'm too busy. But like, because Will Hirsch has done a tour of both Squid Industries and Machine Wise, which are I think it's pretty safe to say the two biggest companies in balisong making right now. Maybe JK, you could argue, just because apparently he has enough machines to manufacture so many people's designs, yours included. But it would just be also cool to see, like, what a smaller scale shop looks like. And I don't know if a lot of people know,
Yeah, it's nothing too crazy. I mean, even with machining, it's like you have your mills and stuff. Every shop's different, Mine's pretty small and lean. I still do a lot of leatherworking because I still like it. It's just hard work. And that's been the biggest issue, is like swapping between leatherworking and knives, because some of the knife stuff's pretty dirty. The leather stuff has to be very clean. I can't be staining stuff. So it's a constant battle for sure.
Gotta wash your hands, dude.
Oh my god, I know. Getting cuts is the worst. I gotta wear the little finger condoms.
No. Hello? What? Gross.
Yeah. There's like, if I cut myself, like, this is like a legit thing. So I can't wear Band-Aids.
Oh my god.
And work with leather. So like, I have to put rubber caps on my fingers if I cut myself. Otherwise, I'll stain the leather. You get water on, veg tan leather, you got to stain. So
Ooh.
yeah.
I thought you were joking when you said finger condoms. I
No,
thought
it's
you were just
bad.
being you.
Yeah, if I cut
Oh.
myself, yeah, I have to mask up my hands. Otherwise, I'll ruin
Oh
stuff.
my
Yeah.
god. Can you not wear gloves? Or is it just easier when your bare
I could, but then
fingers
your whole
actually?
hand just gets like, it's in a glove, So if I'm
Yeah.
working with the leather and I have a cut on like fingertip, I have to mask it up. Otherwise, I'll get fingerprints on stuff. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, you have really beautiful leather sheaths, and people should absolutely check them out. I'm a fan of both of these, and I have flipped. I do not own currently. I have flipped your new knife, the Apollo. I guess can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, yeah. So I think after Phobos was like a great launching pad, honestly. It did a lot for the business as far as like jumping from Pluto and a lot of leatherworking to get up to that point to all of that pretty much allowed me to reinvest and seriously grow infrastructure, as well as like 3D printing has been a new addition to the business as well.
Oh,
So,
okay, that's
so
good to
when it
know.
came, yeah, when it came to Apollo, it was kind of a weird design. I started Apollo the same time I started Phobos. The files were
No way, really.
the same time. Yeah, I don't design one at a time. I design multiple concepts at a time, and then I slowly
That makes
refine over
sense.
time. And then I borrow inspiration from each other, and I just kind of keep building. So at the time, I didn't really have the CAD skills to necessarily accomplish what I wanted for Apollo. So I kind of end up steering towards Phobos because it's a little bit simpler in some areas. So after Phobos and taking kind of a leap year, Phobos was out for 2 years because I kind of milked it out really because I wanted time to build out the shop and sharpen up some kind of dull edges of myself as far as like CAD skills.
Hmm.
So with that design, I wanted to make something that made me excited again. After 2 years of one design, I was pretty bored. Life was kind of going through ups and downs as far as just like life being life. So
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of reinvigorate my passion for things. Part of that was getting more in touch with the local community, like you and Ricky and Aaron. Meeting local flippers, flipping new knives. That was big for me. Like getting out there and trying new knives and just
See,
getting a
Mike,
vibe.
come again. You've only come once, and if you come again, I have so many new knives that you can be like, "What the fuck is this?"
Yeah, yeah. There's so many cool knives. That was an awesome day in the park. Just getting to flip so many new designs and stuff like that. Um,
Come to the next one.
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of wanted to make something that made me stoked again. I took inspiration from a lot of JK's work with the blade. I'm a big fan of JK. It's one of the reasons why I work with them. We work well together.
Hmm.
Especially when things go wrong. Like I kind of joke about this, but like a good working relationship is defined when things are going to hell. Same with the business.
Right?
When things are going
Hmm.
well, that's just kind of the day to day. That's things are easy, but when things go to crap, that's when it matters most. And when I've
Yeah.
had issues or parts don't work or we have things, we're always on top of it to get it fixed, and that's super important to me. So, I took some inspiration from the Monarch for the blade, and I just kept kind of
Can
pulling
you hold it
lines.
up?
Yeah,
Because I have not flipped an embargo, but I think the handles. When I see the embargo handles and I saw the Apollo handles, I was like, oh, I feel like the kind of divot looks similar.
yeah, the
I mean, what do
fuller.
I know? But yeah,
Yeah,
if you hold it up to the camera, then at least you can see what the Apollo blade looks like, and people who know what the Monarch blade looks like can be able to.
yeah. So the as far as just kind of the general vibe, I really liked the Monarch a lot. It's part of what motivated me to start making screws and stuff. So I wanted to kind of pay homage to that a bit. It's not super similar, but it's there. You can see it. It has kind of that vibe, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then the handles definitely look more embargo-like than I thought, but I made the handles kind of back during the Phobos days. And that's around the time that Julian was doing, I think it was
It's
Litex
2 years.
and
2 years
Monarchs.
ago.
Yeah, I don't remember, but the Fuller going down the middle was inspired, the kind of big cutout by the PDN actually, because at the time,
Oh,
yeah, at the time it was the Gigas and the PDN were kind of the JK machine valleys in the market, and I thought that
right.
was a cool idea, the big Fuller. I just thought that was dope, and then the Orca had that as well, and I
Mm-hmm.
really liked that. So I went with that big cutout, and one of the reasons why I did that was for weight distribution. So this cutout starts shallow and then progressively gets deeper as it goes. And that kind of follows the taper. So that allows me to remove material as it goes down, so it doesn't get too heavy down here. So that was one of the reasons why. Also, because this hole pattern is not very indicative, because it it has more solid metal down here. So by tapering it off, it just removes a lot of material, as well as underside reductions as well. So
I've only flipped it a very little bit. Rick, the who Dylan mentioned, he bought one, and so I have a video on my channel where it's basically like me filming his unboxing and me like very gingerly flipping it. But oh my god, it sounds amazing and it flips really good from what I could tell. Like again, I didn't want to. It was brand new and it was not my knife, so I did not want to go like ham. I was like, I'm doing some gingerly fans and let's see if I can do the BTAP without like fucking up. I remember liking it. I really hope that I can get more time and possibly get my hands on one, because I'm like, well, I gotta support the local. I gotta support the homie, get the whole
support the local homies, man.
collection. Yeah, I gotta support. Support homies.
It has the modular weight system with the weight tray.
Yes.
Because it started out, so that big fuller down the middle, that knocked out a ton of weight out of the handles. So much so that it was originally sandwich, and it was too light. The thing was like 4.5 ounces total. It was insanely light.
So is it sandwich now?
It's sandwich now, yeah. And so adding those sandwich walls added weight in. I adjusted things further over time. But once I added the sandwich walls, I still had the spacer cavity in CAD, and then I realized, like, wait, I can just make a removable weight tray. And
gotcha.
that's how that was born.
And that's been really popular too now. And I love that this has become like not just like original idea, do not steal, but this has become things that like, this is good. Everyone should be doing this, and now everyone is doing this. Like we've seen it with the Ori system in Machine-Wise, the Jimpy machine, and B.A. Bally's Nakiri. I think all relatively within the same like 2 weeks.
Yeah,
these designs, and it all had like this sort of similar like you don't need to disassemble the knife in order to fuck with the weights, because as much as I love fucking with different configurations for the Marin system. It was also exhausting, and you don't want to ply apart the sandwich towards the pivot just to pull out these weights. So it was a little like, ooh, I guess I gotta undo. Thankfully, the hardware and the tolerances are like immaculate, but still, that's exhausting. It's so much time just to fuck around with that. So having a really easily removed spacer and being able to pop in new things without having to disassemble the pivots is just like, oh, thank God. I'm so happy that that's become very regular now, including the Apollo. Which if I ever get my own, I'll fuck around with the.
And out of the box, you're gonna get 3D printed spacers, and then the weight tray is loaded with pins. I still stuck with pins, and I'm kind of ride or die with the pins. I'm not a big fan of like including different spacers at different metals, because I think it's too much of a change. You're gonna throw off distribution. So like, if you want super neutral, the 3D printed spacers, they just knock out the weight and fill the void. But after that, the pins I use are tiny. They're like almost little sausages. They're like barely pins. They're so small. And those slowly push the weight back.
Is it the same pins that you use for like Zen pins? Or is it different pins?
It's the same. It's a 1/8 pin. It's exactly half the size though. So it's really small. Yeah, it's a really small pin. It has 4 holes. So if you want to stack it out, you can get it'll feel like like coins in a sock. It'll be really at the end, that's how it feel like. It's super heavy. But between 3D printed spacer, in theory, you could just put the screw in there and have an empty void if you really wanted to like 2 to 3 pins. I think people find a happy spot between there. Like Rick likes 2 pins. Personally, I'm kind of a 1 pin guy. It depends the finish a little bit. Sometimes the finish can change the balance.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So with I guess we're going back real quick with the Phobos, is the Phobos pins the same size as the Zen pins? Are those the exact same?
They are the exact same pins, yeah. So the Phobos has 3 little holes that the pins can go in. It's a huge pain in the butt to put them in and out like any of the knives that have pins like that. So I had to do away with it. That was a huge motivating factor.
I guess my question also is, for the current system with the Apollo, do you manually cut them in half, or do you order like these pins and then you order like smaller pins?
It is the shortest possible pin that I could find on McMaster-Carr, which is like kind of a hardware general supplier. Yeah, so I get them pre-made. I'm not hand cutting pins.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
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 I wasn't sure, and I think pins make sense, especially like, depending on like the materials, and it's like I think especially with the Phobos, I was like, if it's the same pins as a designer and assembly, like you don't have to worry about having a bunch of different multiple parts. You don't have to worry about having brass spacers. You don't have to worry about having stainless steel spacers and
yeah,
all and like some are hollow and whatever. Like it's just you can have a bucket of pins, and I think that as a design standpoint, as a assembly standpoint, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
Having a separate pin system that influenced from what you did like about the Phobos and what you wanted to improve upon it. That I think it makes a lot of sense, and you can get now smaller pins. And I'm not Frankenforge, really nice guy, and I really appreciate it. And he was great on my show. Unfortunately, the pins that he has for his Chanwich designs are actually too long, and he was actually really nice. And so the thing is also when you're like talking about people who when shit hits the fan, kind of, and not that shit hit the fan for this, but when people graciously and very professionally handle when things go wrong, it makes me go, I trust this person. I feel so much better. And so when I pointed that out to him, he was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and just send it to me. I'll fix it for free.
yeah,
Great. Likewise, also Paul Jenkins, who did the Zyzics, also just like, I got better at tuning things. Send it in for. I'll tune it up for free. You can send it in anytime. Love that. And the fact that if you have a good working relationship with Julian, that makes me feel good. And I'm glad that you're having a great working relationship. Opposed to me and Hugo.
yeah. Also giving time too. Like now, not to get too deep in the weeds of how I run production, but giving lots of time. So you got to be a few steps ahead, and that's been the biggest thing. That's why I took off almost an entire year of releasing something new. Was like it took almost an entire year, 7 days a week, to be like, all right, I need to bank up designs, figure out infrastructure. I think things are like, I'm still releasing things, and it's just so much easier to be one step ahead. So same with Julian, it's less pressure on him because he has his business to run as well, and he's trying to grow. And I don't want to be weighing him down, being like, I need something made by this date, So.
Yeah, this is just good business, and it's communication. It's really helpful because as I think a lot of people do know, but in case you don't, that's totally fine. JK Designs, he's made a bunch of his own knives. He's got the Orca, he's got the Monarch, he's got the Embargo, he's got the Light Tech. He's got probably more than I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but he also does a ton of manufacturing for other people's knives. My first guest, Paul Jenkins, for the Zyzics. You for all of your designs so far. He also, I think he did the Puddin'. Was that Turbo Jackalopes?
Yeah, that was a PDN,
he did the Gigas, which is I can't remember his name. W something.
Oh yeah,
I think.
Yeah, WB Concepts. Yeah,
WB Concepts. Thank you. He's also done some manufacturings for. I think there's probably other knives.
He's done a lot. Yeah, he used to put he put chamfers on some of the early Squid products at one point as well. I think some of the DCB Bladework Genesis handles, I believe, were machined by him. Same with some. I think the early Telestos, some of the early Telesto parts, if I'm correct as well, were through JK.
Yeah, I think he did the Henninger stuff. Did he do the Goose? I don't think. Did he do the Goose?
The Goose, yeah. The Goose was originally was going to be machined by somebody else, and then JK ended up taking that project on. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I remember seeing some people had like different prototypes. Someone recently, I think they had a Machine-Wise prototype and they had a JK prototype. Oh, I think it was it was someone else. I'm forgetting who, but essentially JK has kind of hit two sides of his own business. He's got his own knives, and he's juggling several other people's designs and is doing the machining for them. And so being able to weave your schedules into each other is actually probably a really important thing in order to, honestly, just completely function.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess that's interesting. I don't know how long time you said you took a whole year, but I don't know how long it takes for him to send you parts for you to then do all the blasting, sanding, sharpening.
It can vary quite a bit. So I'm kind of a huge pain in some way with Julian because I tend to want to do fairly small. As I grow my business, I would like to actually lessen my quantities even further. So I do pretty limited runs. But Apollo, I was like, all right, I really want to do as little as I possibly can so I can really put a lot of work into finishing. Different two-tone finishes was like kind of a cool
Yeah.
feature with them. So we did a fairly small run. So it's kind of a concept piece. And when you're manufacturing, you'll spend a lot of time optimizing something, right? Like maybe like a Machine-Wise or a Squid. They optimize. It gets the price way down. You're doing larger quantities. Really helps. With my stuff, it's kind of like a giant crapshoot from the beginning to end because it's such a small amount. So much so that like the Apollo project was the most difficult thing he's ever had to make. The handles are so challenging to machine for so many aspects. It took twice the amount of time per cycle than he thought. So the handles took twice the amount of time to make.
Can you explain what those complications were?
Yeah, so I'm not going to get super deep into the weeds, but there's a lot of milling. So the underside has a fair amount of milling. I might have chose some very small pockets to be machined, which is challenging on tooling. And then the big taper and the fuller going down the middle needs to be pretty dang accurate because I go in by hand and satin that on some of the finishes. It needs to be no warpage. It needs to be very clean. And then it has those lines and the edges of the Apollo aren't chamfered. You don't just go in and chamfer them. They're rounded. And they're not a traditional rounding. I lofted those too. So they had to be 3D milled. So it was a lot of mill time on those. And the blades are very thin. They're hollow ground. Those are really hard to machine. We had a pretty large scrap rate on blades as well by the sounds of it. So.
Oh no, not breakage. Oh yeah. So one thing I know about you, as we know, Squid, basically every trainer is available anytime. BB Barfly, you can order anything at any time, and he assembles it there. I still really want to get him on the show. And then Machine-Wise does like drops. So it used to be that they were like, you could put your order in. Well, first it was drops, and then they're like, we made the custom builder, so you can make any Marin compatible system. And then their business has changed again in different ways, and so now it's back to drops. So they'll have like, hey, this Friday we are releasing this, and they'll show you the lineup, and it's first come, first serve. With you, I know that I know you take beautiful photography. You have really, really nice photos. And you do lottos because you only really release one knife at a time every, I don't know how many days.
It really depends on what I'm getting done and what's going on at the time. But right now for Apollo, I've been doing a lotto once a week, and I'll do one knife. Sometimes I'll throw in a couple extra if I can get them done. That's why I kind of do the lottery system is like, sometimes life is just really hectic and I don't have time to make a lot of knives. And part of why I do what I do is I want to do what I enjoy, and I want to put in a lot of love into what I work, like I don't want to just show up and do something just to make it, right? If I was doing that, I would send my stuff overseas, save a lot of money, and mass produce something. But at the end of the day, to me, it's really like kind of a journey that I'm going on and one that I'm trying to build into. So getting to come in the shop and like listen to music and come up with a finish, like I don't like doing the same finish over and over again. That's why I don't want to do tons of knives. Like I don't want to make 50 black knives. That's boring, Like I would like to do like maybe 10 and then experiment with new finishes and stuff. And then from there I lotto them off. So I'll have Instagram lottos about once a week, and then I have an ongoing email pot where people can put their name in, and I'll pull from there as I finish builds as well. Yeah, and I love doing that because I don't have to sit down and take tons of pictures because that's really time consuming. And also I get to have like the best conversations ever with people. Like right now we're recording this like the day after Halloween, and I had a Halloween lotto, and I got to talk to a gentleman, and he was talking about like him and his wife's anniversary's coming up, married for 11 years. He's like, I'm so stoked for this knife. He's like, I'm going to Alabama. I got a sister that lives in Alabama. He's like, we're going there to get a hearse. I'm like, what?
Wait. Back up.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, so he's like, I'm going to Alabama to buy a hearse with my wife on our anniversary. And I was like, what? And he's like, he's so over the moon about the knife. And I'm thinking, all right, well, I have to do something special for this guy. Like, this is crazy. So I thought, well, it's Halloween, so he's buying a hearse. So I end up like, I got back to my house. I was hanging with a friend. It was 2 a.m, and I drew up a casket design and all the Halloween lottos get a little casket for their
I
knife.
was I was
So
thinking, I was like, I don't remember the one Apollo that I saw came in a casket, but a Halloween version makes
yeah,
sense. Do you work with the people that you draw up for like what kind of finishes do you do, or is it just kind of like here's what you win?
yeah. The finishes are usually kind of what I'm feeling. I would say
Gotcha.
sometimes, like if I have a build like right here, and I have little 3D printed trays. Sometimes I have a
Hmm.
build down in the table, and if I pull somebody, and I'm like, I'll just ask them, like, if I got the anno tank ready and I have time, I'm like, is there a color you like? And I'll throw an anno on it.
Gotcha.
One of the reasons why I don't do a lot of color though, and you know this, I'm colorblind.
Forgot
Hitting
about
colors
that.
is really hard, and I feel bad because like there's been times where I post a knife and I'm like, today we have a beautiful purple, and everyone's like, it's blue. so,
It's
so yeah,
literally not your fault. Like
yeah. So I just tend
literally.
to. Yeah, I make and I offer because I can't guarantee finishes consistently in that regard. So yeah,
I would totally put my name in the pot, except that I don't currently have I am not super liquid at the moment, but I
yeah,
definitely want to at some point own an Apollo. And since I know you, I would maybe be like, ooh, we can I do this or that. I don't know. I don't currently have a thought. I usually try and get like a design, and I like variety in my wall, as you can see.
yeah,
Another one thing pointed out is that you said that you like to put a lot of time and effort. You're very artisanal, and we can see it in your sheaths. Your knives are beautiful, and not, you don't have a soundtrack, and you don't have like the custom polishing cloth, but you do have a really nice unboxing experience with a wooden. Was it wooden box? I don't remember exactly, but it was really
yeah. It has
nice.
a wooden lid, so when you open the
Mm-hmm.
box, you're kind of greeted with an Apollo sign, and it also turns into a stand, which is kind of a fun touch.
Yes.
Yeah, and it comes
So
with it comes with 3D printed chopsticks for the knife. You can turn your Apollo into a set of chopsticks. So I think that's pretty cool.
what
Yeah, yeah. You didn't see that?
I I don't know if I
I've
caught that.
kept I've so like everything besides the knife, I've pretty much kept off my page. So if you look, like there's no pictures of like the lids or anything. You posted unboxings, but there's stuff that comes with it that I just don't show. And I like that because I want it to be a surprise. So when you get an
I have to
Apollo,
watch that video again of my own video that
you didn't
couldn't
open the
post on
bag,
video.
that's why. You didn't get to the goodie bag.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
because Rick was like, "Oh, here's like the stand,"
Yeah.
and it's cool because a lot of boxes. As much as I enjoy the unboxing experience, boxes are boxes and they sit under my bed. I mostly have some like a big tub of boxes, and I started to overflow, so they just kind of. But
Yeah.
being able to turn it into a stand is really nice. People who love to display their knives, and there's quite a lot of people, not just flipping, but collectors. Myself, old school Balisong, we take a lot of pride in being able to showcase our knives. So that's really nice. If you got
Yeah.
that kind of, if I mean the Apollo, it's a Grail for sure. So if that was your Grail, that was like the star of your collection, you could absolutely show it off in a stand, and I think that's really cool being able to do that. There's like two questions, one of which is like a little known difficulty about the process of making Balisongs. You've talked about some of it. I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to specify.
Yeah, well, actually, real quick on the packaging, I want to backtrack real quick though.
Yeah, go for it.
But that was a big thing that I'm like a new standard set with Apollo was the packaging. Like Phobos was super like raw dog. It didn't come with much. It had some carbon honey, some pins, and like some other stuff, but it was really simple. Because I'm
It came
in
in
my
like
head.
shredded paper pile and a little in a satchel that was not fitting. It was like this loose cloth bag. I remember.
Yeah, yeah. I think that was. I forget. I don't know if that was how they came out of the box because I think I wrapped them with tissue paper and stuff. But that's maybe how yours
Yeah,
came. I don't remember.
I,
But
I got
either way, it
a
was pretty
Phobos Horizon
simple.
from you. I
Okay.
did I did buy a Horizon from you because you're like big sale.
Yeah.
I'm like yeah boy.
Yeah, yeah. But it was still
But
super simple. It didn't have a whole
yeah.
lot of work put into it because at the time it was like I was just trying to make the knife and get it out and like it was a hard growing period too. So
Oh man, yeah.
when it came to Apollo, I was like, all right, like for the amount of money you're spending, I want it to really grow out. So that's where the 3D printing came in. I was like, this opens up tons of doors, and I've had the packaging's almost become an equal part of the work, but I love doing it because I have some really fun stuff planned. So I think people are gonna like it.
It
Yeah,
is really nice. I will say it makes you feel, oh, this is a premium knife. This is a premium
right.
package, and it's good. I don't know. I love balance songs. I love talking to people who make them, and it's just been so cool to see how everyone is different in different ways. And I guess one thing I also wanted to ask, I was asking you about a little known difficulty that you might want to shout out, because you have talked about some things.
Yeah,
You told me before recording about taking a huge loss on hardware. I don't know if you want to go into that or other things.
I guess in spirit of that, I won't get into super detailed, but I would say if it can go wrong, it will go wrong when it comes to making valleys. With leatherworking, that hasn't been the case. I've only had a few projects go south with leatherworking. Knives are the opposite. Things will go wrong you never imagined could go wrong, like bushings. I've been buying the same bushings for 5 years, and I got about 500 bushings that are just completely useless, and they're not getting replaced by the sounds of it. Who would have ever imagined that to be a problem? Not me. But it is, and 130s are only sold by one place right now. So, so yeah, there's always random stuff. That's why, especially now, like growing into the business and learning, it's like always one step ahead. Don't talk about something unless you have it done and made. You'll never see me do a pre-order. It's true. I don't know how people sleep at night with a pre-order because there's so much crap that can go wrong. I'm not selling it unless I have it. So
the OSP Matrix, we saw what happened with that.
Jay was ahead of his time, and it's unfortunate that the pre-orders buried him. Yeah, it's a shame, among some other things. But he was really ahead of his time. It's a shame. Yeah.
There are so many things that can go wrong, and I remember I was talking to a friend of because I freelance and I do a lot of business advice. I'm like, don't underprice your wares. I know it's so hard with how competitive the Valley market is, but if you underprice yourself, if something goes wrong, it's gonna fuck you. And it went wrong, and it fucked them really badly. And it's like there are some lessons you can learn the hard way. There's some lessons you can learn, and some of them learn the hard way. And one of
we're
those
seeing that right now. We're seeing that right now for sure. With we're kind of in a recession a bit right now, or whatever you want to call it. And it's unfortunate because we're seeing a lot of people fall off. I've been doing this for 6 years. Slow and steady wins the race. It's been a slow game. I don't take debt. I don't take loans. I front every single production. I make sure that if people are doing work, they're getting paid, and they're going to get paid well. And that's my philosophy with it, is like slow and steady. I'm going for manufacturing now. The next year and a half, 2 years, we're going to be fully manufactured in-house.
That's awesome.
Just slowly getting after it. So you got to make sure you price things accordingly. If you're self-employed, it's really easy when you're a young adult and you have low financial overhead to be like, oh, I can sell a couple knives. But when you realize that you're not getting insurance, if you're not getting any type of retirement set up for yourself, when things go wrong, you need to be prepared for those things. And I think some people look at some makers out in the market and might think that's kind of expensive. But what they're not realizing is even cost of living where you are. I'm in Boston, for example, right? I forget the gentleman's name, but he did a review on one of my knives, and he goes, his stuff's expensive, but it's being manufactured in California and then sold in Boston. He's like, those are expensive places to live, right? So my cost of living in Boston on top of where it's being manufactured is expensive as well. That all plays a role on top of trying to sustainably build this out, So pricing's important. I think some people, they go too low. Even my leatherworking, it's expensive, but I would like to think it's worth it and it's sustainable.
I appreciate when manufacturers, for the customer's sake, try to push things as low as possible and I get it, and I really appreciate it, and I do know that they care, but also just the fact is that, when, freelancers, self-employed people, people like us who have our wares that people buy, and sometimes there are droughts. There are periods of times where you're not necessarily able to have something that you can push. You don't necessarily have customers or clients or whatever. And so we have to have savings for when we are not necessarily getting work or being able to sell product. And also, in your case, you just got fucked over with 500 bushings that are tapered and shit. That sucks. And unfortunately, you might, hopefully, I hope that things get resolved, but you might just have to eat the cost if you're pricing so low, you're not able to build that cushion. You're not able, and it's not a luxury thing. It's not like, oh yes, I'm gonna save up for my expensive car. No, it's just regular life stuff.
Right. Yeah, it's business. Super hard, especially when reinvesting. why I started
Mm-hmm.
young is so I can just keep putting money in. That's why like I'm so grateful to people that show up in the early days to show support because it's kind of like it's not a GoFundMe, but it is like you're seeing the potential in what I'm trying to make, and you're
Yeah.
directly supporting me. And that's why I tell people like if you buy this knife, I don't tell people this, but sometimes I say I'm like when you buy these knives, it's like it's going into the next project to make better and better stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I hope one day I can make something and build something enough to really pay everyone back for all the kindness, really, because that's what it is. It's
Yeah.
so much generosity being shown.
As I always say, whether it's something like, if it's an independent artist, someone local, even if they're not a local artist, or it's like the farmer's market, it's always buying something, even if it's something I don't need, but if it's like, even if it costs a little bit more, if it's from an individual person or a small company, it's going to grocery money. It's going to being able to afford rent. It's not a faceless corporation. Like,
Right.
I mean, your face, I know you, like we've met in person,
Yeah.
so like I can obviously can vouch that, yeah, you're not like a big company. You're not making so many products. You're a guy who has, a partnership with JK, but you do a lot of like, you do things carefully and you do things in a way that you are proud of. And I know this. I guess one thing that I want to ask was because your designs are so different, the Pluto, the Phobos, and now the Apollo. But is there any like sort of signature across your design? Is there any signature design philosophy that is consistent across the three projects?
Yeah, I think between the three projects, it's I think when I look at them, I just see like very different phases of my life growing into kind of designing and making. Um, I think like in some way, I feel like Pluto in some ways is like my most kind of like I don't know, it strikes home the most with me. Like it's a very unique blade, you know. The handles were kind of inspired by like the Monarch a little bit. And same with Apollo. Like I'm just super stoked on that design. I made something that I would want to buy with that design, and I just like it. But yeah, I don't have anything like crazy. I'm not, like Jerry Hom, for example, talks about like how with his knives he wants everything to kind of be different, but it's a Jerry knife when you see it.
Yeah.
He talks about
He's
like with
also
BMWs like that. You know when you see a Beamer. Yeah, that was kind of his
Mhm.
example.
Jerry's also very knife focused and more like it's not just a balisong. It's not just for flipping. It's a knife. I know that that's
Yeah.
just his philosophy on things. Talking to him, I also will continue to give you shit for not owning any of your knives. You still don't own a Pluto or a Phobos, right?
I actually do have a Pluto, but it's in parts.
Okay,
I've yet to assemble it.
you fuck. I was
Yeah.
like, oh my god, dude, keep a knife.
I mean,
Keep
it's
at
all
least
I do.
one.
As you know, and Rick, I've been
I
working pretty
know,
much 7 days a week for the past, 5, 6 years.
dude.
So when I have free time, like,
Uh,
I joke. So one of my best friends, Joe, was giving me crap the other day. He's like, "What do you do for fun?" He's like, "What's your hobby, really?" And I was like, "Well, I get to do like really fun stuff all day." But I was like, he's like, "What's one thing that's not part of A51 that you do?" And I was like, "I like to sleep in." And he's like, "That's not a hobby." And he yelled at me. He was like, "You fucking asshole!" I said, "It's not a hobby." And I was
That's
like,
the
if I can get an extra 2 hours of sleep a day, like I'm pretty stoked, and I'm back in the shop working. So
I'm narcoleptic. I'm always sleepy. I do not like it. It is something that it's like no matter how well rested I can be, I'm always gonna feel like fucking shit because that exhaustion just
yeah,
hits me. Sleeping
yeah,
is napping. It just takes up so much of my day. It sucks. It's like people. It's like, oh, I'm being lazy. No, but like the fact that you can do it as a hobby. Fuck you. I've started to get into a card game called Flesh and Blood. That's my hobby now. I mean, knives are my hobby too. But like, here's the thing. Also, I understand. I love my job. I am a video game composer. I am now also a professor teaching video game music and sound design. Like, I
hell yeah.
love my job, but it's also work. And it's nice to have like I'll give you shit for not keeping at least one knife. I still think you should keep at least one for yourself. But like I also do understand that like you do need to have a separation of work and life. You need to have a separation of work and life, Dylan. Um,
Yeah,
but
I get it a lot, but we'll get there eventually.
bitch, take. I'm always like, hey, you should do thing, and you're like, nah, man, I'm fucking busy, and I'm like, oh my god, dude.
There's always something. It really
There's
is never
always
ending,
something.
See, it's
Yeah.
like work out, sleep, and once a week I'll try
You
to
go to
go
the
out and hang
gym.
out.
Is that a hobby?
Yeah, I got a home gym, so that saves a lot of time. I don't
You
have to
work
commute
out.
around.
He has
There
a
you go.
hobby.
I have
He
a
does
hobby.
it. He has a hobby. I don't work
Yeah.
out.
Well, I
I
spend
fucking
so
hate
much
that shit.
time just not walking around. Like I have to force
Oh
myself
yeah.
to do things, because otherwise I'm on a bench all day or a computer. So to stay healthy, yeah, you gotta take care of your health. So
Well, I lost a lot of weight and then I gained it all back because I don't work out. I did martial arts and then I just slowed down because like I'm at a point in my life personally where I have a Tetris well that has stacked up and there are a lot of small things that I can't clear because I have big priority things and unfortunately I've just not had the time capacity to clear those big things. So right now I'm just been like so
life
busy.
hits, man. Life
Life
hits
hits you.
sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be less busy in January, I guess. So, um, I guess my final question: is there anything you would like to tell our listeners?
Um, yeah, well, obviously, thanks for all the support. And I got some new stuff coming down the line. We still got some good amount of Palo to finish, but stay
Oh,
tuned.
for sure.
There's always new things. I mean, I got some, I'm always like throwing in little Easter eggs into new stuff. So, keep an eye out. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's about it. I'm trying to get more enrolled in like the community and showing more of the behind the scenes and stuff too. So I'm hoping to have more of that out, or maybe around the new year and stuff like that.
All
Um,
right.
and also just support your local makers. Buying firsthand helps a lot, especially right now in the markets right now. I can't thank
Yeah.
people enough. I see people that have been in the email pot for a while, just patiently waiting, and it means the world. When I get around to people, I try making it worth it. So. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know, like, if it's not painfully obvious, I know how hard you work. It's not. It's literally you're going as fast as you can in a way that is also still resulting in a good product. So like if anyone is like being like oh fuck these lottos, it's like well would you rather have it be a speed competition because that's even worse I would say. So knowing the situation you're in, the capacity you're in, and you are working. I don't know if you'll ever be in a position where you'll have an employee, but at least your current capacity, it is what it is, and the fact that people are buying your knives and they're very nice and they're expensive. I hope that by the time I feel like I have the funds to get one, I can get one. I hope the project doesn't like stop. Um, so I guess with that, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Balisong Meet the Makers. Like and subscribe for more. Click the bell. Dylan, A51, where can people find you and your wares?
It's A51 projects across the board. It's a pretty weird name. So I'm on X technically. I don't use it because we keep the Balisong community every other week. We're moving off of Instagram. And then we never do. We were on Vero. I got a Vero. Follow me on Vero. Or on whatever it's called. I got an X. No one's on X. We're self-imprisoned here on Instagram.
Here's the thing. A lot of people are on X, but for some reason the knife community is trapped, and I don't know why. And it's stupid because X is way less regulated, but like
Right.
it's hard to just move like transplant a community, which is why I'm still on Twitter. I refuse to. I will dead name Twitter. But basically, the fact is that when people is like, "Oh, Twitter's going to shit," which yes, it is. I'm gonna go to Blue Sky. I'm gonna go to Mastodon. I'm gonna go to Hive. I'm gonna go to Grinder. I'm gonna use mail pigeons.
Mail.
and
We're
I
gonna
was
go on
like, I
Truth
can't do all of
Social.
these.
We're gonna get it going on Truth Social. I think that's our next move. It's the only one we haven't jumped to. Reddit's there, but I don't do well with Reddit. I don't know what's going on with
I don't
Reddit.
deal well with Reddit either. But,
Yeah.
So are at least you're on Instagram, and do you have a website? I know that you have a
I
newsletter.
have my
A51
Etsy shop.
Projects.
I still got the
Etsy
OG
shop.
Etsy shop. If you want to enter my lottos, my email lotto is A51 Projects Lottos. But honestly, what I always tell people to do is just message me. So A51 Projects on Instagram. Shoot me a DM. Let's have a conversation. And that's the best way to do it. That's why I do what I do. I make small numbers. I want to be able to talk to people, build a relationship, make sure everyone's taken care of. So just DM me.
Yeah, that's my homie. He's a good guy. So with that, see you next time. Happy flipping, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. See you around, Dylan. Come to the next meetup. I fucking swear.
I'll make it out.
You better.